You know that cup of coffee you enjoy every single morning? Well, it's actually the final chapter of this incredible story, a story that begins way before sunrise, high up on a mountainside. Today, we're going to trace that journey all the way back to the source, the harvest. We all love to talk about the roast, right? Or the perfect brew method, but the real magic, the stuff that truly defines your coffee, it starts way, way earlier. It all begins with the coffee plant itself. And that one moment, a farmer decides a single little fruit is ready to be picked. I mean, just look at that deep, vibrant red. This right here, this is our starting point. And it isn't just a piece of fruit, it's pure potential. Inside each one of these cherries are the coffee beans we know and love, and capturing them at this exact moment of peak ripeness, well, that's everything. So how do we get from that, a little red cherry on a branch on a remote farm, all the way to the complex aromatic brew sitting in your favorite mug? The answer, my friends, is an intense, meticulous, and absolutely fascinating process. So let's do it. Let's follow a single day during the harvest season to see exactly what it takes. It's a story of incredible hard work, amazing skill, and deep-rooted tradition. Our journey starts in the pre-dawn darkness. Picture a coffee farm in Colombia. Long before most of us are even dreaming about our first cup, the people who actually grow it are already up and hard at work. And just look at this schedule. The day starts at 4:30 a.m. By 5:30, they're already out in the fields, picking. Think about that for a second. They've already put in nearly 5 hours of hard physical labor before many of us have even had our second coffee. It's a grueling day that only wraps up late in the afternoon when they weigh the day's harvest. Okay, now let's get to the real heart of the matter, the harvest itself. Because picking coffee isn't just about grabbing fruit off a branch. Oh no, it is a highly skilled craft where precision is absolutely everything. This is the million-dollar question, right? Because on any given branch, you'll have cherries at all different stages of ripeness. Green, yellow, red, all sitting right next to each other. So what's the secret? How do they know which ones have hit that absolute peak of perfection? Well, it's this amazing blend of tradition and science. It all starts with the eye, looking for that perfect, deep red color. Then, experienced pickers rely on touch, giving the cherry a gentle squeeze to feel for just the right amount of give. But for the really top-tier specialty coffee, it gets even more precise. They use a tool called a refractometer to measure the sugar content, the Brix level. That peak sugar is what eventually becomes the complex, sweet flavors we're all looking for in that final cup. And this obsession with precision forces a really crucial choice. See, not all coffee is harvested the same way, and the method a farmer chooses has a massive, massive impact on the final quality. For the absolute highest quality, you've got selective picking. This is painstaking work. Pickers go through the same fields, visiting the same trees every week or so, and they only choose the perfectly ripe cherries. The alternative is strip picking, where they just grab a branch and pull everything off in one go. Ripe, underripe, you name it. It's way faster, but you can imagine what that does to the quality. This chart really lays it all out. Selective picking, highest quality, but it's slow and expensive. Strip picking is fast, but the quality is all over the place. And then you have mechanical harvesting, which is the fastest and cheapest, but you have to do a ton of sorting later. So the big takeaway here is that amazing cup of specialty coffee you love, it was almost certainly picked by hand, one single cherry at a time. So the cherries are off the tree, the hard part's over, right? Not even close. In fact, a whole new race against time is just beginning. The next stage is all about processing, and every single second counts. See, the moment a coffee cherry is plucked from the branch, the natural sugars and yeasts inside start to ferment. And if that fermentation isn't controlled, it can quickly create off flavors and ruin the beans. So farmers have to get those cherries to the processing station as fast as humanly possible, usually on the exact same day they're harvested. The very first step in processing is another round of sorting. Workers will remove any unripe or overripe fruit. Sometimes they do it by hand, and sometimes they use this brilliant low-tech method with water. It's simple. The perfectly ripe cherries are dense with sugar, so they sink. The bad ones, the underdeveloped or damaged cherries, they're less dense and they just float right to the top. Okay, after sorting, it's time to get the bean out of the fruit. One of the most popular ways to do this is called the washed process. The idea here is to remove all of the fruit and its sugars before drying the bean.
This stops any wild fermentation and results in a super clean, bright, crisp flavor that lets the bean's natural character, the soil, the altitude, really shine.
So here's a look at how that works. The cherries are fed into a machine called a pulper, which basically squeezes them between a rotating drum and a plate. This action strips off the outer skin and the fruity pulp, separating them from the bean inside. The bean is then washed totally clean. It's a method all about highlighting the pure, intrinsic flavors of that coffee. Now, let's look at a completely different approach, the natural process. Here, instead of washing everything off, they do the opposite. They leave the cherries completely whole and dry them in the sun, kind of like giant coffee raisins. As the fruit dries, all its sugars ferment around the bean, creating these wild, complex, fruity, almost wine-like flavors. It's not about being clean, it's about infusion. And then you've got this beautiful hybrid right in the middle, the honey process. They remove the skin, but they leave on some of that sticky, sweet fruit layer. It's called mucilage. This stuff is packed with sugars, and by carefully controlling how much they leave on, farmers can precisely dial in the final taste, creating these coffees with incredible sweetness and body. So, after the harvest is weighed and the initial processing has begun, the farmer's incredibly long day is finally starting to wind down. But you have to understand, this work is so much more than just a job. It's a way of life, one that's deeply rooted in community and tradition. I think this quote just captures it perfectly. The dedication you see at every single step, it reflects this incredible commitment to the craft. It's the human element, the sheer hard work, that truly makes a cup of coffee exquisite. But this traditional way of life, it doesn't exist in a bubble. It's actually facing some very real, very modern challenges. If we zoom out from this one day on the farm, we can see these larger forces at play that are changing the very nature of the coffee harvest. And I'm talking about climate change. It's creating some serious problems. Rising temperatures are making the cherries ripen way too fast, sometimes before their sugars can fully develop. Unpredictable rain can ruin an entire crop that's been laid out on patios to dry. But maybe the biggest issue is that the harvest window, that perfect time to pick, it's getting shorter and way more intense. And that puts huge pressure on farmers to find enough skilled pickers for a much shorter period of time. So the next time you take that first sip of coffee in the morning, maybe just pause for a second. Remember its story. It's a story of early mornings, of skilled hands, and a frantic race against time, all happening thousands of miles away. It's a journey that might just change how you appreciate what's in your cup. What part of that story will you be thinking about?